Hello and namaste internet friends, this is Yuvraj once again from Schema Pro, and in this video we're going to discuss a brand new update that we've added or recently added to Schema Pro. And the brand new update that I want to talk about is the how to schema block that we've added to Schema Pro. Now if you're a Schema Pro user, you already know that this was already possible inside Schema Pro because the how to option or how to schema was already available as an option to add to your pages and posts. In fact, we already did a video about it which I'll link in the description of this video and also add it to the cards above. Now, since I'm recording this video, there has to be a difference between the existing how to schema type that you can add with Schema Pro and the new how to type which I discussed. Well, I already gave you a hint if you were paying attention, but all will become clear in a few seconds. So make sure to watch the video till the end and also give you a free gift if you watch the video till the end. Okay, let's head to WordPress now. So we're inside the magical world of WordPress, and the process of adding schema to any of your posts using Schema Pro is simple. You head into settings, go to Schema Pro, add a new type of schema, and then you will have all the schema types available to use on any of your pages and posts. You already knew that. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is that now you can add the how to schema on your pages and posts with the help of a Gutenberg block. Now, if you already know the process of adding schema using Schema Pro, then you already know that this process that I've highlighted on the screen is amazingly powerful if you want to target specific pages and posts. In simple words, it's a great process if you want to add the same type of schema to a lot of pages and posts. It's also a great process to use if you're using any kind of page builders on your website, because page builders, no matter what it is, they don't allow natively adding schema data to your website. Now, the how to schema is usually not the same on a lot of pages and posts, which you can probably understand. So we wanted to build a better solution for the users who are using the Gutenberg or the native block editor inside WordPress and also want to add the how to schema to their pages and posts. Hence, the how to block was born. So let me open up a post on my website and I'll show you the how to block in action. So inside the post, the process of adding a block or any block is the same. You can use this plus icon right here, or you can type the name of the block, which is preceded by the /. So I'll do that right now. And after typing in just a couple of characters, the how to Schema Pro block appears on the page. So let's click it and it will add the block automatically to the page. And instantly the block is added to the page. And you can see all the options that the block has added. I'll explain all of them in detail, so don't worry about that. And I can also understand that it looks a bit overwhelming, or it's difficult to understand why there are so many fields. What is this notice? So I'll talk about that in a second, and I'll also make sure that you completely understand each and every process or each and every step that you need to take to complete or create a complete set of how to schema on your page. So explaining the options, let's first start with this notice. Now, if you're familiar with Schema Pro, then you might be familiar with a feature that we have added in Schema Pro already, which is a feature that tells you if you have added incomplete schema to your page. As you're probably aware, there are two types of fields inside schema. There are mandatory fields, which are obviously mandatory to fill in, and also there are recommended fields, which are recommended but not mandatory. So if you fill out or you miss out on filling any of the mandatory fields, then Schema Pro already tells you that, okay, you're making a mistake, don't do this or fill in this information. And with the Gutenberg or the block editor, it's not possible to show the same kind of error on the screen. So that's why this notice has been added. This just tells you what kind of information you would need or you need to add to the how to schema to make it complete or make it valid schema for Google to actually look at and pass or have rich results appear for you. So this notice does the same job. It tells you the fields that you need to add to have valid schema on your pages and posts, and it will disappear once you add the required fields. Also, this notice block is only visible in the editor. It will not be visible in the front end. It's also mentioned here. PS, notice that this notice is visible only in the editor. This will not be visible in the front end. Also, once the required fields are added, this notice will go away. All right. And as you can see on the screen, this notice is telling me that the image field that you can see right here is not filled in. So I'll need to add the image to the how to block. Otherwise, my schema will be invalid. So that covers the notice part, but there's still a lot of things to understand in the how to block. So let's scroll down below and you'll see all these options on the screen. Now, as I mentioned, this can be a little bit overwhelming, but it's also hard to explain without a practical example. So what I'm going to do is introduce a practical example on the screen right now, and then I'll explain all the fields that you need to fill in using that practical example. So you'll be able to relate and understand how to add or which field to add or how to fill in each of these fields to have valid how to schema on your pages. So I'm back with a practical example, and on the left is the regular post that we were talking about, and on the right side of the screen you'll see that I've opened up the Google's rich snippet guidelines specifically for the how to schema, which also includes an example. Now using this, I'll be able to explain the different aspects or different parts of the how to block much easier. So let's start with that. So talking about the how to rich result right here, you have a few things that you need to consider. The first is a title that you see, then you see the URL of the page, then you see a small description alongside an image. This is completely different from the actual steps that you see. And then you have the number of steps, then you have the amount of time it takes to complete all this. Then you have tools and materials, which I'll talk about, which is also option available here. And then you have the actual steps. And now you can't see it here, but inside the actual steps also, what you have is an image. Particular to each step, you have one image. Then you also have a heading for the image, which you can see right here. And you'll also have a description for the image. So with that, let's now compare and let me show you how the same options are also available in the how-to block. So the heading that you see right here is actually the heading that you'll probably see here. It can also come from the title of the page. This depends on Google completely. Obviously, the URL of the page will come from the URL of the page. Then this section that you see right here is the description of the actually how-to section. So you won't describe any of the steps. You may describe what you're trying to achieve in the step. And then image, you see right here, the image block that you see right here. You'll add an image that describes the step or shows the end result of the steps taken place. For example, the example here is how to tile a kitchen backsplash. So this is an image of tiles that are actually backsplashed. I don't know if that's the right term, but I hope you understand that you'll include an image right here that shows the completed steps, everything completed. Okay. So these steps, obviously the number of steps that you add right here will be shown here by Google. The time, tools and materials section I'll talk about in a lot more detail when I go specifically into this block itself. Now coming to the steps first, you have 3 different steps here, and in this editor or in the default how-to block that is added to the page, you will see 2 different steps. So this is the first step. This is the second step. So this heading right here is just a separator between the initial block, which is this part of the section or this part of the how to rich result, and this steps below it are the actual steps. So I'll try to highlight it on the screen right here, but what you see right here, the image, the title and the description is one step. And if you go right here, then the image, title and description is the second step. And obviously you can add more steps if you like. Just click this plus icon and one more step will be added. And this is how you can probably relate how all the details that appear in the rich results for any how-to schema are also present exactly in the how-to block that we've added to Schema Pro. So back in the full screen mode, now we need to talk about the individual options or the configuration options for the how-to block. Now, as you probably know, inside the Gutenberg or the block editor, you have some post related settings and you also have block related settings. And the block level settings are obviously different for each kind of block. Now, before we explore the settings of the block, one more thing you need to understand is that the how-to block is just not one block. It's actually a collection of blocks. What do I mean by that? Let me show you. Inside the Gutenberg or the block editor, you have this option which lets you see all the blocks that you add to your page or post in a hierarchical order. So let's click it. And here you see you have 3 blocks. So the how to Schema Pro block is the parent block, and there are 2 different steps block inside it. So these individually are 3 different blocks with different settings. So you'll have different settings for this Schema Pro or how to block, which will kind of also affect these steps. But the steps themselves are individual blocks. So you'll have settings for this, and individual steps will have their individual settings as blocks. I hope you understood that. If you didn't, don't worry. When we explore the settings, it will become clearer. So let's start with these block settings of the how to block itself, the parent block or the group block, whatever you like to call it. And you see the settings for the post right here. Let's switch to the block options. And now you'll see a lot of options here. The how to Schema Pro block and all these settings, and we'll see all these settings hierarchically in individual order or chronologically, sorry, not hierarchically. So let's start with the general options. So general option is the first option is the primary heading tag. So what is the heading that you're going to use? So default is H3, but you can make it H1, H2, anything you like. Here, coming to the total time, as remember in the example I showed you, the total time was visible. So if you enable this, this will just add one section here that you'll be able to add the total time to, which will also be added to the schema itself. Again, you can have enable this option to show estimated cost. So the total amount of cost that is needed, you can enable this option. I'll just keep this disabled, both of these disabled to simplify things right now. Coming to this, you have show tools and materials. If you remember in the section below or in the example that I showed you, tools and materials was an individual section. So if you enable these options, what it'll do is allow you to add a number of tools or add the actual tools that you use to perform the how-to steps. And you can also change the amount of tools that are added to the schema. So if I change this, you will see all these entries coming up here on the screen. So let's say you need total of 3 different tools. So you'll just make it 3, and then you'll just go here and replace them with the actual tools that you need. And in the material section, again, you'll do the same thing. You'll do this and the amount of materials you need, and just go and replace this with the actual materials you need. And this data will automatically be added to the schema, saving you a bunch of time. It's pretty simple. Just to simplify, I'm going to disable both of these right now, but I hope you understood how to add the time, how to understand or how to add the materials, and also the tools. Coming to the style options, so obviously the style options contains all the cosmetic things that or cosmetic changes you want to make to the how to block. Now with the how to schema, it's kind of Google's regulation or Google's guidelines that whatever content you add to the post in terms of the how to schema should also be added to the schema and vice versa. So with the other type of schemas, you just add the content to the schema and you don't have to add the same data to the post itself. But with the how to schema, that's different. But Schema Pro saves you a bunch of time. You don't have to add the how to schema data to the schema because that is taken care of by Schema Pro automatically. And the benefit of that is that you can customize the how to block, which is visible to the user in any way possible using all these options. So you can change the heading color, you choose a custom color apart from these options or these colors. You can choose a secondary heading color, and you can also change the color of the description. Along with that, you can also change the typography of everything. So you have the complete controls over how every block or how the block actually appears to the end user. And you can customize this and make it completely seamless with your website. And you can also change the row gaps and gaps between the settings. So you have complete control over how the block appears. And not to forget, no matter what colors you set, no matter what typography you set, everything will be added to the schema automatically. So you just have to design whatever content you want to add to the how to block, and everything else is taken care for you. So these are all the options in the heading block or the main parent block. Now let's switch to the actual block or the step block, and I'll show you all the settings inside the block. So all you have to do is just go here and click, and it will change this block to the steps, and you'll see all the options here. So the first option is the image. And as you can probably see, the image is already here, but you have the option of changing the position of the image. You can have it above the title. This is the title. This is the image pertaining to this particular block or this step block. And you can change it to below the title right here, or even below the description. This does not affect the schema in any way. So this is just a cosmetic change that you want to make. I personally prefer the below title option. And also remember, when you make changes to a particular step block, it does not affect the other block. As you can see right here, it just affects that particular block. So keep that in mind when you're making any changes to any of the blocks or specifically any of the step blocks. So coming to the content itself, now you have again the similar looking options. You can change the title tag, which I obviously showed you a few seconds earlier. You also have the typography options. You can change the title color, and you can do the same thing to the description as well. Again, you also have the option of setting up a separator. So if you want the contents of or the heading, the image and the text to be separated by something, you have the option of just adding a separator. And right now you can see it's offset after the title, but you will not see anything because it's set to none. But you have multiple options. You can set a solid style, a double style, dash style, even a dotted style, and then once you select any of these styles, it will be visible on the screen alongside the block itself. So that's one cosmetic change that you can make specifically to the step title. Now coming to the link section, this is very important to understand. So I'll take a few seconds to explain this completely. Whenever we are talking about a how to block, it involves obviously a number of steps, but each of these steps are not probably explained in a lot of detail. Let's say, for example, you're writing about how to fix a kitchen leak, and one of the steps is prepare the sealant that you will use to seal the broken pipe or whatever. Now, in that case, whenever you're talking about preparing the sealant, you won't go into all of the details about how to prepare the sealant, the various materials required for that sealant, how to mix them, or maybe what are the proportions for that, because that will require another dedicated article, right? Now, obviously, if you start adding all the content or describing each of these steps in a lot of detail, the entire article will become a gigantic piece of content, and people who are just looking for these steps quickly will not be entertained, or they won't find value in the article. So what you can do is, if there is any kind of step which I just talked about, which needs to be addressed in detail, you can add the link to that specific step or an external link to that step to explain that. So I don't think I explained that very well. So let me go back to the sealant example. You add a step to your blog post, or specifically the blog post you're trying to address, that you prepare the sealant, but you want to link out to another blog post, probably on your website, on how to prepare the sealant itself. So that is where the link field comes into play. So what you'll do is just add a link that will explain that step in more detail. The link can be a blog post on your website, maybe a video link, or even a blog post or a page on another external website. That's perfectly fine. So this is where the link field will come into play. The options are pretty simple. You have first the type, complete box, none, or text. Now what that means is where the link will appear. Do you want the link to be on the complete box or the step box? You want it to be a piece of text, or you just don't want to add the link. Technically, the link is not a mandatory field, but it is a recommended field. So if you have links for specific steps or specific articles or your resources that you can or you want to add to the step block, I would highly recommend that you do so. So for this example, let's keep it at the complete box. And what you have to do is just add the link right here. And if you want the link to open in a new window, then just enable this option. Coming to the spacing option, this is pretty simple. You have complete controls over setting margins. So you can set the margins or the bottom margins for the title and also the description, and also for the image you can set all 4 margins. That means the left, the right, the top, and the bottom margin. And then you add advanced settings if you want to set an HTML anchor text, or you want to add some CSS classes to it. That's also possible. And the same was possible in the actual heading or the parent block also. So these cover all the settings inside the step block. If we go and choose the second step block, you'll see the same settings again here. And as I mentioned, these settings that you apply or change in one step block do not carry over to the second block. So make sure any cosmetic changes you want to make specifically to the entire block or all the steps, you just copy and paste or make the same changes quickly to the next steps as well. So I hope that makes sense. Let me make the design a little bit consistent, and I'll just keep this below the title, and now the entire structure makes sense. So with that, I hope you understand the entire structure of the how-to block. This entire block is a parent block. Inside it, you have the heading, the description, and the image, and then you have these steps themselves. This is the first step, the image for the first step, the description of the first steps, again the second step, the title, the image, and the description. If you want to add more steps, just click this and it will be added here. And in a similar manner, if you want to remove any of the blocks, then what you can do is just click right here and remove blocks, as you usually do in the Gutenberg or the block editor. Just make sure that you have at least 2 blocks, because that is the mandatory requirement for appearing in rich results for how to block. If you have less than 2 steps, then Google will give you an error and it will reject the schema altogether. So that was a lengthy explanation. Let me just wipe the sweat off my forehead and we can proceed to the next step, which is actually adding the content to the how-to schema block. Because obviously I've explained all the theory, but in reality you'll need to add or fill in the data right here, and then we can also test out the schema. And as I mentioned, once you fill in all this information, this notice should go as well. So let's pause the video, let's fill in information, and we'll also test out the schema. And if it works, obviously it should work. So let's test it out. I'll pause the video and be back in a second. So coming back, I've filled all the information in the how-to block. Let me take you to a quick tour. So this is the title of the specific how-to block, how to tie. I use this because it's the simplest example I can think of. The description of the actual steps, an image that represents how the tie will look like. And obviously the total time needed is around 5 minutes. Total cost USD $65, which is the default price or the default entry that I just kept, because a tie, usually I don't know what it costs. The required tools, what were hands and things needed, a tie. Now these are optional fields, but I specifically filled them in, and no matter how absurd they sound, because I wanted to show you a complete result in the Google Rich Snippet Testing tool on how it looks like. If you don't fill out this information, you will still be eligible for rich snippets or rich results, but you will not, or you will see some warnings in the Google Rich Snippet Testing tool. So I just filled in this information to cover all the bases. Coming here, this is the first step. This is the drape your tie around your neck, another image, description of the image, and I've also added a URL, just an example URL, so that you understand how it will appear, or if you can ignore or if you avoid the URL, then you'll just get a warning. And coming to the second step, and I also added a third step. Oops, our typo here. Let's fix that. And similarly, there's an image with the third step and also a little bit of description. And to save some time, what I did was I already published the post, and I also took the liberty of using or testing this URL out in the Google Rich Snippet Testing tool. So let me show you the results. As you can see, the page is eligible for rich results. Apart from all these breadcrumbs and site links, which are part of Schema Pro, the how-to results is what we are concerned with. And if you look at all the details, every information that we filled in the how-to block is available here. And as I said, I just added an example URL. It's also being detected by the Google Rich Snippet Testing tool. Let's look at the preview if we can see a preview of this example or this snippet in the search results. So inside the preview, you can see all the details, the how to block in Schema Pro. The Ben Arthur is just the title of the website. It's a demo website that I created, so you can ignore that. And this is the description of the first or the primary step that I described, or the parent block actually, and then a tie, and then you can also see some of the details coming up as 3 different steps. And the images don't show up here usually, so just ignore the part where the images are missing, but images will usually show up. And you can also check out other types of results. So let's check it out just for fun and see how it appears. So coming to the second preview, you can also see it's a similar result for at least for this area, but instead of the images, you can now see drop down menus or drop down options where all the fields are described. So this is how it will appear if you appear in the result type 2. And also there are a couple of extra examples, but this is for Google Assistant, so I'm not really sure if they'll show up here. Let's test it out. So the Assistant preview does show up, as you can see right here on the screen. And as it says, this tool provides a preview of one of the screens displayed during guidance with Google Assistant. So if you have a tablet device using Google Assistant, then this is how the screen will come up. And the preview is in the Google Home Hub, which is a smart device produced by Google, and no other device preview is available. And if you look at this step, then also it just kind of looks the same, but the steps are actually described in a little more detail. And again, no other device's preview is available. But the interesting part is how easy it was to just add some data to the how to block and have the how to schema with this rich kind of results show up for your website. So if you learned something from this video and you enjoyed this video, then there's a secret code to tell me that I'm doing a good job. Just leave a thumbs up on the bottom of the video and that'll tell me that I'm doing a good job. And if you are feeling more generous, and a subscribe will be appreciated on this video as well. Before you click off to any other video, there's a promise that I made that I'll be giving you a free gift, and the free gift is a free schema course that I'd like to give you or offer you for free. It's available on Skilljet Academy. I'll leave a link down in the description. You could go check it out. It's a complete free schema course which will tell you all about schema right from the beginning, the basics, and how you can use it to develop a competitive advantage against your competition. It's a completely free course. Link is in the description. And before you go, make sure to check out Schema Pro. The link is also in the description. Also, all the videos we've done about Schema Pro, the link will be in the description and the cards as well. And I'll just wipe the end screen up right here, and I'll leave the link to the playlist right here so you can't miss it. Just click the link. You'll have the playlist of all the videos. Enjoy your day. Take care and stay safe.